We'll get rid of them when we start, like, our proper...
Are we going homesteading? Mostly I look like I just sit right back and you'll hear a tale.
Like you've been, yes, a 4-hour tour.
A 3-hour tour. But that's
Is it 3 hours?
Which one can I... With Gilligan, I was going for a bonnet. This is what you do when you don't really plan and you go into the prop room. And you're like, I've got... So you're Pa.
Howdy, ma'am.
I'm Gilligan. Or Ma. I was going for Ma.
It's too bad we don't have bonnets in there.
It's okay. So what are we talking about today besides horrible hats and retro television, although it connects?
This is Strange Little House on the Prairie, dear.
It is a strange little house on the prairie. Oh my God. Hi.
Oh my.
So anyway, for a change of, wow, look at us. I'm not even apologizing, not even sorry. I should probably be very sorry, but I'm not sorry. Yeah, we're doing Little House today. And for a change of pace, I'm doing like the backgroundy book stuff, and Juliana is doing the adaptation.
I get to be in the 20th century.
Oh my God, how does it feel in the 20th century?
Oh my God, it's amazing.
So we're going to go homestead in the middle of the country, right? Because
that's it.
Got it. I'm cool. All right. So we're back, Sans Bad Hats. And I am going to start talking about the Little House on the Prairie book series. Woo! And Miss Laura Ingalls Wilder herself. And I have to say...
And ladies and gentlemen, here she is, Miss Laura Ingalls Wilder.
As dug up last week. No, so it's funny because the Little House books and Laura Ingalls Wilder are like right here in my heart. Aww. Because they were... This is going to come across wrong, but they were approved reading in the cookhouse. I had all the books. That. I remember my little powder blue lined up on the shelf, whole series of them. And Laura Ingalls herself was born February 7th, 1867. We've really had a certain thing going on for the 19th century lately, yes. 18th and 19th. She died February 10th, 1957. Wow. And, I mean, the thing that I think as a kid, I always thought, I sort of had this misnomer of being like a Diary of Anne Frank sort of thing. Like she wrote these things as she went along, like at those ages. I guess what I'm going to say is researching exploded a lot of misconceptions and myths I had from my childhood. I honestly thought it was a sort of diary type thing.
Well, they're written first person, right?
They are written long after the events, and not always they're... As I'm going to get into, yeah. Laura was at times, especially in these early books, too young to have written any of this herself.
Yeah.
So a lot of what happened with the series was it was done when she's much older, and her daughter Rose helped her kind of... Rose was her editor, which was, you know, as you'd expect a mother-daughter collaboration to go, sometimes brilliant, sometimes at each other's throats. But the result were these 8 fabulous books that are still... regular staples in children's literature. And there are technically more than 8, but I'm going with the core 8 because these are the ones she was A, alive for, and B, had final transcript approval on.
What do you mean alive for?
After her death, there were more books released.
Got it.
And in fact, she only had, I have to turn the page over for these ones, she had only outlined the transcript for one of the posthumous books, and that was the first one, the first 4 years when Laura and Almanzo were together, starting their life. The subsequent books, like Rocky Ridge, etc., are almost exclusively Rose Wilder Lane. But yeah, so what I'm going to focus on for the sake of us comparing the books to the later adaptations, because there's a lot of adaptation too, beyond just TV, I'm going to focus on these 8 core books.
Okay.
Now, first of all, let's review the family, shall we?
Let's do it.
We have Pa, Charles Philip Ingalls, Ma, Caroline Lake Ingalls, older sister Mary Amelia Ingalls. Then there's Little Half Pint herself, Laura Elizabeth Ingalls. Baby Carrie, Caroline Celestia Ingalls.
Ooh, Celestia.
There's a middle name. Yeah, exactly. There was Charles Frederick Ingalls, and if you don't remember him, it's okay. He's the one who died in infancy. And then the tiniest one, Grace Pearl Ingalls. So that's your core of the Ingalls family. Now, The Little House on the Prairie itself is the third book in the series.
Yeah.
We start rolling back to Little House in the Big Woods, which was published in 1932, and it centers around the Ingalls family when they still lived around family in Wisconsin. Chronologically, interestingly enough, this book should fall between Little House and On the Banks of Plum Creek, the third and fourth books.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but what happened was Big Woods, they felt like they didn't know if it was going to succeed. So she's like, what's a great story? Well, the way it actually went was they went out to the prairie. Things didn't go so well. They went back to Wisconsin. Then they went out again. But because Big Woods went so well, they're like, all right, we're going to keep pushing now. And so there's a little bit of backtrack.
Wow, okay.
So you wind up with this misconception that they started in Wisconsin, never looked back. There was really more about Bink Bink before they really went out there. The second book in the series is Farmer Boy, which was released in 1933. That is her husband Almanzo and his family, who were on a farm in New York State. Proud New Yorker. Not that part of New York, but that's okay. Third book in the series, Little House on the Prairie, the one we all know, the one we all love.
Actually, but Big Woods was my favorite.
You really love Big Woods?
Yeah.
Can I tell you a fun sidebar story about Big Woods for me?
Yeah.
Within that book, and people who know the book love this, they have the sugarin.
Yes, absolutely.
Where they have the maple sugar.
Yes.
It's a huge thing in upstate New York, too. We're lousy with maple trees in the fall. And early winter is when there's a sugarin. But I had never had that experience of you pour the syrup in the snow and make candy.
Yes, yeah.
And I did not understand at the time. I thought you could just do that with almost any maple syrup. Not quite so.
Is this the voice of experience?
Yeah, and also I'm pretty sure you probably shouldn't try to make maple syrup candy in the dirty snow by the front street of your parents' house in Schenectady, New York. They didn't let me. For some reason, I wasn't allowed to eat it.
Aren't you
but
glad?
Anyway, yeah, no, Big Woods is... Honestly, Big Woods is a great place to start because you do get to know the family and they're still surrounded by their people.
Yeah.
So... the way it fell out worked out okay. Moving back to this third book, Little House on the Prairie, it covers 1869 to 1870 with the family heading out to Homestead in Independence, Kansas. Their journey to Homestead is basically that entire thrust of the book. It's worth noting that they move while the land is still being negotiated for by the United States government.
So really a leap of faith there.
Yeah, a leap of faith / a little bit illegal. So once you know that...
Outlaws.
It's hard to... Like, when they get moved off you feel bad for them when they have to leave their homestead, right? At the end of it.
Yes, right.
But when you realize they really weren't officially supposed to be there, it kind of kills the story a little bit for me. P.S., this is the book that Laura did wind up putting the most research into. I mentioned she was only 2 or 3 years old at the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but if I was told to recount all the tales from like my 2 to 3 year old lifespan, I probably would need a little help.
Yeah.
So
fill in some blanks.
Yeah, she leaned on the memories of her older sister Mary and what they had of Ma, what Ma wrote down, and Rose also, and her. They did research for this one. So again, young Kay's idea that this was a diary of Anne Frank, everything was written down by Laura, less so. She was too little to have much lettering yet. So this was all found out and then retroactively put in. So we moved, at the end of Little House, we've moved off the land that we weren't supposed to be on. And we go to the 1937 book, On the Banks of Plum Creek. Now, On the Banks of Plum Creek is a lot closer. I don't want to steal all your notes from you, but it's a lot closer to what the series actually depicts, honestly. Even though the series was called Little House on the Prairie. Plum Creek, we're in Walnut Grove, Minnesota. The events of the book. There's a little bit of artistic license that's interesting here. I really wound up picking out the things, going on the assumption you guys really do know the basic idea here. You know the family's bulldog, Jack, that cutie little thing. He never went with them. He never left. Wisconsin. Laura brought the dog along in the narrative because in the first book, everybody loved the bulldog. Yeah. So that's the idea. The character did so well, we're just going to keep writing him in.
Isn't that funny how things never change?
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's a smart move.
Please the people. She kept her popular character around.
Yeah.
Right at the end of that book, the scarlet fever hits. And going into By the Shores of Silver Lake, 1939, they have now recovered from scarlet fever, but oopsie, Mary's blind.
Oopsie.
So, I know, that's so sad. As happened back then, tragic illness, which we could treat nowadays. See how I've turned an entirely tragic, heartbreaking thing.
Great compassion. Whoops!
Oops, guess those eyes don't work no more. Sorry.
Hey! Get yourself together.
I'm sorry. I have no respect.
Go to your room. Oh, wait.
Go to my room. Oh, now that's weird. The family moves from Walnut Grove to DeSmet, South Dakota. Okay. And this book covers a couple different years. Some of the books cover longer periods of time, where it's around 1880 at this point. We're introduced to the youngest Ingalls. This is when Grace is born. And P.S. back to Jack for a minute, our lovely bulldog character. You know how he's depicted as dying in this book.
Okay.
Again, he hadn't come with them. So the dog did die in Wisconsin. Laura justified having these events and basically having the fictional dog come along as this book, By the Shore of Silver Lake, is supposed to be kind of that transition book for her, from her adolescence to her adulthood.
That's right, yeah.
So losing childhood things like your faithful bulldog is like, so she might have created it, but it really did, for a work of literature, it created a strong moment.
Yes.
Helped with the arc.
That makes, I never thought of that. That makes a lot of sense, that her coming of age would be, leaving your childhood behind you in tangible ways. Yeah. Yes.
And also in By the Shores of Silver Lake, this is one of the first times the family encounters the railroads. We're no longer in our little covered wagon anymore. So railroads in general at this point were starting to become a more reliable form of transportation. Towns were cropping up around them. The Ingalls family winds up kind of taking up residence in a kind of a boarding house situation. They wind up helping out with the settlers who are rushing through.
And this happens in the television series too,
exactly.
right? Just in Wisconsin,
yeah,
right?
It's not Wisconsin, in Walnut Grove.
Yes, right.
So they wind up working there as land claims are opening up. And in fact, the thrust that moves the family on to the next one, the Long Winter, is them getting another land claim. Yeah. Now, the Long Winter, 1940, I'm keeping the publishing dates alive with this too. Yeah. Because we are looking at this with like about 100 nearly 100 years difference.
Wow, it's an interesting point. Yeah. 1940
is when she's publishing The Long Winter.
Oh my God.
I called this for you. Winter is a-coming, y'all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Interesting.
The Long Winter is the shortest of the books. It covers 9 months of the family's life. Yeah. In comparison to everything else, the time period's short, the reading length is short, but boy, did they go through a lot in 9 months. Because this was it was called the Snow Winter.
Yes.
And it was particularly frigid. This covers late 1880 to 1881. The Ingalls had their noon claim, but they have to hunker down and protect it. So basically there's a parade of blizzards, and they wind up subsisting on brown bread and potatoes. And you'll remember this if you read the book. It's super and then we made it through and we were patching the cracks in the wall.
Yes, I remember patching the cracks in the wall.
This book, I think I have the strongest memories of. From just because it's
harrowing.
Yeah, and I also live in upstate New York, so dealing with snowy storms and being like, well, at least there isn't snow coming in the cracks in my cabin. But they make it through, obviously, because there are more books. But there's a fun little game that Laura plays here with the age of characters. Okay. She is 13 at the time.
In real life.
Yes. And her age is correct. Okay. But this is where we first see her encountering Almanzo. And Almanzo at the time, one of the big threads here is the idea that he's 19. You had to be 21 to have a land claim. So he's fudging it. He's sure. But in fact, he was 23 at the time. Okay, so wasn't an issue. She created it. There was literally no problem with him getting a homestead, but it made for good dramatic tension. Yeah. So just worth noticing. I wrote, nice, Laura, nice. But I get, again, like with the Bulldog, you get why certain things were moved around to make it a fulfilling work of fiction. Yeah. So Little Town on the Prairie is released in 1941. So if you've been following the years I'm explaining, it's like every year she's putting out a new book. I call this one, Hallelujah, Winter's Over. Okay. Laura begins work as a seamstress in order to raise money for poor blind Mary.
And how old is the character Laura?
She is now 14.
Okay. And so she begins her first job.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is also the point where Laura starts studying to apply for her teaching certificate. Right. And in the later books, that's a huge plot line that goes through. Yeah. Also notable in Little Town on the Prairie, Almanzo begins courting Laura. in their very cute way. They take that little buggy ride together around Christmas time, and aren't they cute? And then we roll into the final of these core 8 books, these happy golden years, which was 1943. Laura firmly becomes a teacher at this point. She marries Almanzo. And what is the telling piece in this book to let you know where Laura intended for this to stop, it actually ends with a statement, this is the end of the Little House books. It's in the text. Oh, wow. So her intention was to have this 8...
Wrap it up.
Yeah, wrap it up and be done. I don't think her intention was to tell her, like, her entire family forward story. But as these books were successful and Rose had more stories from her mother, I mean, they just kept these other books going. But really your core... And to review again, because it is interesting to keep this in your mind, the Little House books were published between 1932 and 1943.
Wow.
Quite a lot going on in our contemporary society at that point, and you can reflect on how that influenced, sales and what people were going through.
And also, like, the yearning for another time, pre-World War I.
Yeah. I think there's always been, and this is sort of the companion episode to when we were talking about, well, at least I wound up talking about homesteading when I was talking about Old Yeller, where I already kind of explained all the history of homesteading at the time. But I think there's always sort of been an appetite for when our country was still that young, and people were really able to adventurously throw their life in a covered wagon and go, if you could defend that land, it was yours to have. Depending on kind of the kindness of nature as well, honestly. There's just something about that really has always, I think, connected to Americans.
Really popular. It's interesting to me that she is turning out books after knowing how the previous book did commercially. So it's like she is writing for a specific audience. It's not like she's just like in her attic, writing just her memoirs for somebody to read someday, even if it's her grandkids. She's actually writing them for an audience. So about 100 years after Laura Ingalls was born, we began to adapt her stories for the screen, and there were television adaptations. Actually, the television series that we know from the 70s is not the first. There was actually a show in the mid-60s in England called Jackanory.
Okay.
And it was a British television series that was that intended to encourage kids to read. So our generation's Reading Rainbow. It ran from 65 to 96.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was actually revived in 2006.
Okay.
So in 1966, 5 short episodes aired that were based on Little House in the Big Woods. And then 2 years later, in 1968, 5 more were released, this time based on Farmer Boy. And Richard Monette was the storyteller for that. Do you know who that is? He's a Canadian actor.
The name is familiar.
He ran Stratford Shakespeare Festival, so kind of a big deal. And early in his career, in 1968, that was a fun little gig for him.
Nice.
And then we all know. 1974 to 1983 is Little House on the Prairie. So I didn't realize, I was watching it in syndication. You've heard
exactly. Yeah.
I didn't realize that's what it was.
Even more remote from me, my grandmother was getting it from a Time Life VHS tapes through the mail series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that meant I was getting it chronologically.
Oh, interesting.
But we were getting a tape from Time Life, I think monthly. Wow. And we'd watch it together. Yeah. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah, I remember children, once upon a time we had a thing called a VHS.
So I was actually watching Little House when I was preteen, a teenager.
TV. Yeah.
I think it was on TV, actually, yeah.
Yeah, because like the Hallmark Channel.
I don't think we had it on VHS.
Okay, yeah, it was just one of those things. Grandma had a lot of things come through the mail, subscription style.
That's so cool.
Including her
It's
collection.
like Netflix, kind of.
Kind of, yeah. And only you kept it, and then it slowly filled up your shelves. Back then, we had a lot of clutter, too. There is something to be said for being able to store it all in your cloud for your iTunes.
That's right. But eBay, I'm sure, is happy for all those subscription services.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Well, the television series described itself as a loose adaptation. So probably the novel purist came after them a bit. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't around for it, but I would imagine.
Well, it certainly survived. The series length you're talking about is way beyond any time the Ingalls family was in any one place until the very end when they finally settled in. Well, and even then, it was where we follow Laura and Almanzo. Like, the narrative of the book never idles for 9 years anywhere. A lot of the stuff, to my memory anyway, that happens in the book, over all of those, kind of gets shoved into Walnut Grove because they weren't going to move the location that much. Yeah.
And you can evolve there. It's easier to let your characters and the technology, everything evolve in one spot, right? So the namesake book was represented in the premiere. It was only represented in the premiere. As you've already said, on the banks of Plum Creek, that was written in 1937, is where a lot of the characters and locations are coming from.
Nellie Olson and all the various personalities of the town.
Yeah, that's right. So Michael Landon starred as Charles Ingalls. Karen Grassley played Caroline Ingalls. Melissa Gilbert played Laura Ingalls. Melissa Sue Anderson played Mary Ingalls. And by the way, you look to me just like Mary Sue Anderson.
Oh, Melissa Sue Anderson?
Yeah.
It's funny. My husband has a crush on Melissa Sue Anderson.
So he has a type.
Apparently.
From the moment I met you, actually, I thought you looked like Melissa Sue Anderson. I just didn't say anything because I didn't want to be weird.
No, that's okay. And we also didn't know we both loved Little House quite
yet.
Yeah. So if
exactly.
had we established that, I would have been like, aw.
You are a dead ringer. The twins, Lindsay and Sydney Greenbush, played Carrie, but they were credited as one person, Lindsay Sydney Greenbush.
Yeah, can you imagine if it was Mary-Kate Ashley Olsen?
That's right.
Yeah,
no. 3 names, 2 people, what?
But that's very common in TV. You'd have twins because...
Instead of crediting them separately, they were just credited as one.
See, that's not common, but having twins play the baby is super common.
Absolutely.
For long film days and how long the union permits you to have babies on set.
So Victor French, you were asking about him. He portrayed longtime friend Mr. Edwards. Dean Butler portrayed Laura's husband, Almanzo Wilder. And some of the characters were added into the show, such as Albert, played by Matthew Laborteaux, an orphan who the family adopted.
Yeah.
Right? And though it deviated from the original books in many respects, the television series, which was set in Walnut Grove, Minnesota, was one of the few long-running, successful dramatic shows, family shows.
Yeah.
It ran top rated the entire time it ran. It garnered 17 Emmy Awards and 3 Golden Globe nominations, along with 2 People's Choice Awards. It was also incredibly popular in Spain.
Oh.
Yeah.
This I did not know.
Yeah. La Casa de la Pradera.
Ooh la la. That's French. Look at our culturalness.
Earned several TP de Oro awards, which is the equivalent of the Emmys in Spain at the time.
Nice.
Melissa Gilbert and Karen Grassley both snatched up trophies while the show won for Best Foreign Series in Spain. Isn't that fun?
That's amazing.
Michael Landon, and a lot of us know this, directed most of the episodes. He was Bonanza veteran, and I got to tell you, I am very familiar with Bonanza. My mother was raised in the 70s to be a 1950s housewife.
Oh boy!
And she raised me and my sister to also be 1950s housewives. So I kid you not, I have seen every episode of Bonanza.
Unsurprising. And Bonanza continues.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bonanza continues to do really well in reruns. I mean,
whenever I'm getting my nails done, I'm watching Bonanza. I'm like at every nail salon.
There's Dan Blocker, and there's oh my gosh, yeah. And I actually I discovered Bonanza after I'd seen some Little House. But for me, Michael Landon, this is a fun little with me. I first encountered him walking away down a long highway with the Appalachian over his head, Highway to Heaven.
Yeah, that's right.
Episodes of Highway to Heaven ran right before Chippendale's Rescue Rangers, which kicked off the afternoon cartoon block.
Yes. So all the moms can put away the laundry that they've done and folded for the day as the kids come home from school and plop down in front of
I had such a Michael Landon dad crush. I've talked about my dad crushes in the past with you, and I love Michael Landon, and I cried when he died.
So he was approached to direct the pilot only, and he agreed to do it on one condition: that he was cast as Pa.
Right.
He went on to direct 90 of the 204 episodes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he wasn't the only thing borrowed from the hit Western Bonanza. The ending theme to Little House, another work by a theme song composer, David Rose, was originally heard as a piece of incidental music in a later season Bonanza.
Nice.
Old scripts were dusted off too. Bonanza had installments called A Matter of Circumstance and A Dream to Dream. They were rewritten in the Little House series to become A Matter of Faith and Someone Please Love Me.
I remember A Matter of Faith really clearly.
Yeah, just to name a couple.
Yep.
Yeah. Allison Arngrim auditioned. That's Nellie.
Yes, it is Nellie. Yeah.
She auditioned to play both Laura and Mary. Few characters from the series or the 1970s in general connected with fans as much as the catty Nellie Olson.
People really did love to hate Nellie.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And as we've discussed before, it is really fun to play Mean Girls. I love it. That's the role I would go for if I was auditioning.
They have more fun, and they're not bound by all the rules that your good heroine is.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. And I do know that I've recently read Melissa Gilbert's book within the last year or so, and I know she and Allison were actually
very good friends.
Yeah,
very good friends.
And they had a lot of great scenes together. And I think when you have that kind of off-screen friendship, that can really play into. You'd think, oh, I can't be mean to my friend, but no, it's
more so.
Exactly.
Because you're not afraid of. Yeah, you are safe. Yeah, that makes a big difference. All right, you ready to spill the tea?
Oh.
On some of the backstage stuff?
Well, not on the electronics.
Pa Ingalls' hair color came out of a bottle.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Landon had gone prematurely gray while he was still in his 20s. And during his Bonanza days, in fact, he used Clairol medium ash brown to color his crowning glory.
We'll put it in the show notes so y'all can do that to your hair, too.
Link to the product below for our Amazon kickback. He continued using the exact same product when he started on Little House on the Prairie, dyeing his hair himself. Shout out to the do-it-your-hair coloristas.
Yeah. All good.
But the scorching sun in Simi Valley, California, would turn his hair, after it had been colored, an odd shade of violet. So
downside,
and the lights would then have to be adjusted to not catch on his head and reflect this violet color off his head. So eventually he gave in and he allowed a professional to come into the set to color his hair. Yeah, and Michael Landon was very proud of his physique. He never passed up the opportunity to appear shirtless on camera, which is why Pa never broke an arm or leg falling off in any of his farming mishaps.
Yeah.
He only a rib, only broke the ribs,
And then he had to have his shirt off with the bandage around his tummy.
Exactly.
I remember that.
He also preferred to go on au naturel underneath his trousers.
Okay, now that's disturbing for the number of times the girls were on his lap. But
His tight-fitting Prairie trousers. That's the alternate name for this episode. His tight-fitting Prairie trousers.
Aww.
Okay.
Ooh la la. Strange but tight, dear.
Also, his manly swagger is due to his very special boots. See, Michael Landon was...
Walk with your special boots.
Mm-hmm. Michael Landon was only 5'9" in real life, but he didn't want any other actor to tower over him, so he wore 4-inch lifts in his boots.
Wow.
And if that boost wasn't enough in any particular scene, he would make sure that Charles was positioned on a staircase or a ladder or a mound of dirt.
There's a fine tradition of that, though. Artfully on the staircase, yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about the girls. The novelty of period clothing wore off really quickly for the girls in the cast.
Yep.
All of the exterior Little House on the Prairie scenes were filmed on 10,000 acres at Big Sky Ranch in Simi Valley, California. And a cool day meant temperatures in the low 90s.
Yep.
So most of the days that they were filming, that the temperature was in triple digits.
They were baking.
Yeah, and they're clad head to toe in heavy cotton stockings, petticoats, pinafores, and bonnets. Both Allison Arngrim, who played Nellie Olson, and an assistant director passed out from the heat on the first day of filming.
I do remember hearing that. Yeah.
So speaking of Nellie Olson, her curls were actually a wig.
Yes, they were.
For the first few weeks of filming, though, they actually curled her own hair with a special iron that had to be heated in an oven. And finally, it was decided that a custom-made wig would be worn for her. It would be, save time, it'd be more humane.
Yeah.
But it had to be held in place by this enormous metal comb and dozens of long, straight metal hairpins, all of which frequently dug into her scalp and made it bleed. Yeah.
Suffering for your art, baby. Although from the standpoint of, I get it, with even 2 seconds of looking at that hairstyle, you go, there's no way they did that every day.
But they did.
They were,
they did at the beginning, yeah.
But they're perfect barrel curls. That does not happen. And also, let's just be clear, that doesn't happen on the prairie. But anyway, even in Walnut Grove.
But let's talk about Ma Ingalls for a second.
All
right.
What about Ma? Also strange, but what about Ma?
Karen Grassley was asked to change her name when she was cast as Ma. Do you know this?
Top of my head, no. I think I maybe vaguely.
Okay, this is funny.
Yeah.
Although Michael Landon asked her to change back to her real name, which is Karen Grassley. When she auditioned for the role of Caroline Ingalls, she did so under her stage name at the time.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Gabrielle Tree.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of Ma Ingalls, did you know that almost every meal she served was actually Denti Moore beef stew that comes out of the can?
That I think I knew.
So any dinner scene that you see where she's serving any kind of generic meat, whether it's rabbit, chicken, squirrel, whatever, it's always that can of stew. And in fact, when Laura Ingalls is seen pulling out a drumstick out of her lunch tin, that, my dear, is KFC.
Hey,
So let's go back to the girls. Nellie and Laura, as we mentioned, were actually best friends. They had sleepovers at each other's homes. They became partners in crime when it came to playing pranks. So do you remember that episode where there's the runaway wheelchair that Nellie Olson is in?
Yes.
So both her broken arm and her screams in that episode are totally real.
Oh, boy.
Bunny is the name of the episode. It's where Nellie gets thrown from the horse that she won from Laura in a previous episode and ends up paralyzed.
Oh, God.
It's a fan favorite.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. The climactic scene occurs shortly after Laura discovers that Nellie can, in fact, walk and was just faking it the whole time just to get attention.
Yeah,
She gets her revenge by taking Nellie to the top of a hill in her wheelchair and then by giving her a shove.
Oh, boy.
In reality, Allison Arngrim had recently broken her wrist in a skateboarding accident.
Okay.
So the plaster cast on her arm was real.
Legit, yeah.
And they did use a stunt double for the shot where Nellie flies out of the chair and into the pond.
Yeah.
Arngrim was required to ride in this rickety 1870s era wooden wheelchair down a rocky slope so that she could be filmed screaming for close-ups.
Oh, boy.
The chair was attached to safety ropes, but just prior to the second take, the director yells, "Action!" and one of the crew members yells out, "Oh no, the rope is broke!" It hadn't. But Arngrim didn't know that, and her terrified screams as she's bouncing and rolling down the hill, struggling with one hand, stay in the chair.
Made it legit.
Are authentic.
Made it legit.
So that was the take.
Way to go. Child Protection will be calling you later. That's all I got. That's
okay. Cool. Oh no, this is a fun one here.
All right.
They blew up the town at the end.
Yes, they did. That is one of those considered those endings in TV history, like the dinosaurs go extinct in Dinosaurs, or they blow up the town.
Yeah. So there was a reason that Walnut Grove was blasted to smithereens. When the series began, producer Kent McRae made an agreement with the property owners to restore the land to its original condition after filming. minus the scorch marks, I'm guessing. Yeah. So trying to figure out a way to dismantle the set, Michael Landon just suggested, let's blow it up.
Blow it up. Yeah.
So they did. All right. Moving on from that, there was Laura the Prairie Girl, which was an animated series. It was a Japanese cartoon series of 26 episodes.
Dang.
Originally entitled Sogen no Sojo Laura. Okay. There was Beyond the Prairie, 2000 and 2001, which is the true story of Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Yes.
It was 2 made-for-television movies by Marcus Cole with Meredith Monroe as Laura. And part 1 tells the story of Laura in De Smet, while the second part is about Laura and Almanzo Walter Grogan's marriage and their life in Mansfield, Missouri.
Yep.
It also features a lot of the characters. Wilder's young daughter, Rose, who's played by Sky Nicole Bartusiak. Then there was Little House on the Prairies, the miniseries in 2005. 5-hour-long series, it's 6 episodes, miniseries, on House on the Prairie, attempted to follow very closely the books, Big Woods and House on the Prairie. It stars Cameron Bancroft as Charles Ingalls, Erin Cottrell as Caroline Ingalls. Then there was a stage adaptation.
Oh, yes, there was.
Little House on the Prairie, the musical.
Musical.
This is regrettable stage musical theater in my... did you see it? I saw it.
Yeah, I was about to say, tell the people, Juliana.
I saw it in St. Louis with my sister. My sister and I were very excited because we watched the series growing up and we listened to the books.
And who was Ma? Who was playing Ma?
Melissa Gilbert.
There you go. Okay.
We were real
Not
excited.
noted for her musical theater chops. Is that an okay way to put it?
Yes, it was this is a perfect example of casting for the marketing and ticket sale potential.
I know she had a lovely time with it, as far as what she says in her book, that she really did enjoy the experience.
Well, I'm glad she did.
Says, yeah. Well, I know. And hey, ladies and gentlemen, can you read the review on Juliana's face, sans words? No, she had a lovely time, and I think in a lot of ways it's because whenever she thinks of Little House on the Prairie, it takes her back to really what was a lovely creative time in her life. Moments with who's supposed to be her on-screen husband and all of that aside. But she kind of grew up on that series.
Of course she did.
I think in a lot of ways it was more of it was a marketing thing, and it was kind of a personal favor to her than like a huge perfect marriage of talent to material. Would that be a way to put it?
Agreed.
Natural talent.
But ending on a positive note. There is a documentary, Little House on the Prairie, The Legacy of Laura Ingalls Wilder. Okay. Have you seen the trailer for it? I watched it a couple days ago.
I haven't, actually.
It's done by Dean Butler.
Yeah. Okay.
Narrated, and I believe he produced it as well. Uh-huh. I don't know. I'm sure, actually, yes, there is a website, we can link it below, where you can purchase the documentary, and then the trailer is on YouTube. We can link that there too. But it's cool. It looks pretty good. Little House on the Prairie, The Legacy of Laura Ingalls Wilder. It's a 1-hour documentary. And it's her story as a writer, a wife, and a mother. And it's done through interviews with scholars and historians, archival photography, paintings by frontier artists, and dramatic reenactments.
Ooh. Not just reenactments, dramatic ones.
Dramatic reenactments.
Dramatic reenactments.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Oh, man. And my husband is especially going to enjoy this episode. His jam was Little House when he was a kid. He had a crush on Melissa Sue Anderson, and it wasn't just because Anderson was the last name.
We need to get you in a prairie dress and a bonnet and see what sparks ensue.
Oh my. Well, I mean, it is already, it's interesting because I do remember my mom was one of those moms who made all my Halloween costumes.
I had my Laura Ingalls. I was Laura, my sister was Mary.
Yeah, there was a toss-up the year that Mom was in Make Kay a Dress mode, because also, you might have noticed my costume clothing aesthetic. I'm not dressing down to make Juliana look more glamorous. This be how I am, yo. So when I request for Halloween to have a dress, that's a big deal.
Oh, I got it.
So my mother, with lovely stars in her eyes and hearing the angels sing, I had 2 options. I was either going to go with a Little House thing because I love Laura Ingalls, Or I also at the same time was having a real love affair with the American Girl books. Not the ones you think of now. We're talking about back when they were history based.
Yeah.
When you only had 5 girl stories, in fact. The girl who I really connected with was Felicity Merriman, who was the colonial girl, Kelsey Breeze. The choice was either a prairie dress or a colonial dress, and I leaned in the Felicity direction. Are you smiling because you know where that dress showed up?
Yes, I do.
All right, behind the scenes 1776 story. Hey, look, I'm bringing Mr. Jefferson into the room again. My wife is wearing my dress. I play Thomas Jefferson. My wife Martha needed a dress, and Tom had one in his closet. So what happens in Monticello stays in Monticello. And that's my dress, and that's my story, and that's Little House on the Prairie. And it took a weird turn at the end.
Y'all come back now.
You hear? You picked that.
I'm out.
Hang on, I don't have my Gilligan hat anymore.
No, thank God.